The funny thing about the college system, in my opinion, is that we don't teach our students how to be professional students. There's a very, very famous problem in college that I like to call the bridge problem. I don't think we've talked about that in this class, right? This is very common in US higher education system, and the bridge problem goes like this. You graduate, you go through all of high school, and that's compulsory education, meaning that if you don't show up to high school, a truant officer will show up to your house, knock on your door, and ask you where you are. It's legally required that you go to high school. I used to be mad about this fact until I realized that that was a protection against child labor. I don't know if you knew that. One of the ways that we protect children from having to do labor many, many hours a day is we force them to go to school. And so I like that idea, but one of the really crazy things about that is that means all high school education is designed to be required, and it's designed for very, very particular state required deliverables. When your high school teachers get evaluated on their jobs, they get evaluated on the ability to get you through those tests at the end of the year. They're paid on that. It's part of their, I don't think it's a good way to incentivize good teaching, but it is a reality of the system. And then normally, if you go through the standard path, what happens at the end of your high school? When do you end high school? What month?
May.
Yeah, maybe May or June. And then you have how many months?
3 months.
3 months, and then you start college, and then you get into college, and now all of a sudden, everything has changed. It's no longer compulsory. The assumptions of the system has changed. And I always say to my students, it would be better if your first day of college, the chairs were stapled to the ceiling, the teacher was speaking Russian, and you don't speak Russian, and everything about that system looked foreign, because at least in that situation you would be like, uh-oh, something's different. But right now what happens is we get into a class, they have something called an exam, they have something called the teacher, they have something called desks, they have something called students, and it looks really, really similar to the system that you were just in, right? And so what ends up happening is a lot of young students come in, the 3 months that they had off, not a single person sat down with them and said, oh yeah, by the way, these are the skills you're going to need to get to use to get through your college degree, and this is how it's different than high school, and let's work through that problem together. No, instead we throw you to the sharks and say, deal with it. And then you get into your classes and your instructors just assume that you have professional level study skills without ever talking about it. Anybody have that feeling in your first few classes? Like, whoa. Yeah, I call that the bridge problem, meaning to say you have two islands. You have high school education, you have college education. The system does not create a bridge between those. And do you know what we do for every single student in college? We force every single student without guidance to reincarnate study systems through repeated failure. It's called iterative design, right? How many people have done that, where you tried a class, you messed up, and at the end of the class you're like, oh, I should have done this. And so the next class you do something different. And you just keep doing that and keep doing that until you have a system that works for you. But usually, you know when that happens? When you're done with college. That, to me, is really, really silly. The study skill stuff that I work on in my classes is so that we can jumpstart, so we can start to solve the bridge problem as a part of my classes. And the reason that I do this really is because if we can get you thinking about these problems now systemically and designing better algorithms than the ones that you had in high school and really getting you to what I would say professional learning skills, my claim is not only is the hope that you will have a better experience in your college degree, but that you can then build faster repetition than what it took me to get through college.